Good evening. Thank you all for joining us. I'm Chris Sable, Executive Director of the Vail Symposium. On behalf of Dale Mosier, our board chair, and the entire Vail Symposium board, we're glad to welcome you to tonight's program. The Vail Symposium has been offering affordable, thought-provoking programming since 1971. I'd like to thank the organizations and individuals who helped make the Vail Symposium possible for our community. Our presenting sponsors are the Town of Vail and the Frechette Family Foundation. Our event sponsors are the Vail Daily, Vail Resorts Epic Promise, and the Antlers at Vail. Our summer season is underwritten by Cindy Ingalls, and tonight's program is underwritten by Mary Pat and Keith Rapp. Tickets cover about 15% of the cost to run the Vail Symposium, so donations of any size are appreciated. Let's give all of our donors a round of applause. If you're interested in joining our donor family, you can go online and hit the donate tab and find out about it, or you can find me and I'll be happy to pick your pocket. So let me tell you a little bit about our speaker tonight. Bruce Cryer has spent the past 40 years researching and teaching innovative approaches to maximizing health, resilience, and human performance. He's one of the original creators of HeartMath. Since 1997, he's been an adjunct faculty at Stanford Business School of Executive Program. He's the lead author for the landmark Harvard Business Review article, Pull the Plug on Stress. After a long career working in the holistic and integrative health fields, Bruce became president of the Graduate Institute for Holistic Studies in June of 2020. That curriculum was acquired in 2022 by Salem University, and he is now the executive director of the Integrative Health Institute at Salem University. I'm going to tell a quick story. As I got to know Bruce as we were working on this, it turns out that he and I both share a past in the theater, and does anybody here know the musical The Fantastics? Okay, just a few of you. You really ought to check it out. Well, anyway, he played the lead for 800 performances off-Broadway in New York at another time in his career. We'll get to maybe see a little bit of his talent there. Please give a warm welcome to Bruce Cryer.
Thank you, Chris. And he sings. How cool to see all of you tonight. Thank you for coming. All of you guys who agreed to come, you know who you are. Thank you for coming. All of you ladies who decided to come, thank you for coming. Only my second time in Vail. I'm thrilled to be here and have a couple of days to see the beauty. I'm staying at the Antlers, so thank you guys, Antlers, for, I guess, being one of the sponsors tonight. This topic, stress, anybody here relate to it, or you have friends that have heard of it, or distant relatives who are stressed out? Anybody stress an issue? Sorry that it's not more of you, but yeah, oh, good. You do HeartMath, excellent. Yeah, we're going to learn about this topic called HeartMath. How many of you have heard the name HeartMath before? Wow. How many of you have heard of the Fantastics before? About the same people, in fact. How cool is that? So I'm really looking forward to sharing this with you, and for those of you who are interested in any of what I share tonight, tomorrow will be an extension of that. If you have time for the morning session or afternoon, I look forward to getting in even deeper than what I can do in the hour and 10 minutes that he's allowing me to speak before questions start. There is an actual hook, apparently, that will pull me off stage if I don't stop. But in addition to what Chris just shared with you, so this topic of stress and adapting and tools to be relevant to our lives, there's a lot of reasons that topic appealed to me, but my backstory is raised in a lovely family in suburban New Jersey, youngest of 5 sons. All of you women, like, seriously, how did she manage? Luckily, we were pretty spaced out, so a lot of the older guys got to take care of the younger ones like me. Also a very creative family. My mother was an artist in every conceivable medium except music. My father, on the other hand, was a brilliant singer. But those were not their day jobs, so my mother taught home economics at the local high school. My father was an insurance guy, commuted into Manhattan every day for 35 years. So that was the the life, kind of upper middle class suburban upbringing. Also very, very supportive of any creative impulse, any new idea I would get interested in. Parents were like, you go for it, which was remarkable to have that from parents. I don't know how many of you also had that good fortune. Unfortunately, they're both no longer with us, but I feel their presence all the time in the paths that I've chosen. I'm representing my dad in certain ways. I'm representing my mom in certain ways, not because I'm trying to be, but I'm just such an offspring of them. So I'm eternally grateful to them for how they chose to raise me and my brothers. But some more of the backstory is I had this, growing up in the 60s, 50s and 60s, 2 brothers sent to Vietnam, 2 at the same time, both of whom got injured. None were life-threatening, although both of them died in the early 50s. And I was an anti-war kid, like so many of my generation. Some of you were as well, I'm sure. And to have that happen, to have 2 brothers in Vietnam, one of whom was trying to be a conscientious objector, but he was turned down. He ends up as a medic on a helicopter evacuation crew during the Tet Offensive in 1968, and gets hit by a sniper. If you're going to get hit by a sniper, being a medic in a helicopter evacuation vehicle is probably the best place to have it happen. They lifted off, got him to a hospital, and his life was saved. But it affected me very deeply having that happen, and I was in my young teen years. And but little by little, I kind of found myself gravitating more and more to the arts. And I'd been a trumpet player, never intending to do anything with it, but at age 8, they tested all the kids, and they said, you should play violin. And I said, violin? There's no way I will play violin. And they said, well, you've got a really good ear. You should play French horn then if you want to play an instrument. I said, French horn? Like, who plays French horn? We have a trumpet. My brother has a trumpet. I want to play trumpet like my brother Denny. And they agreed and let me play trumpet. So I played trumpet for the next 10 years. But high school was a turning point because a new teacher came into the school who brought Broadway musicals to my high school. And before that, we were watching plays like The Crucible and Waiting for Godot and like incredibly depressive, dark, and suddenly West Side Story and amazing stuff. And I was playing in the orchestra, playing trumpet for some of these shows, and little by little I thought, wow, it looks fun on stage. All my friends are up on stage. I'm down here in the pit. I go up to this guy, the vocal music teacher one day, and say, how do I get up on stage? He said, just join the chorus. 1 year later, I have the lead in the high school musical. 2 years later, I'm playing the boy in the Fantastics in the original production in New York City. For those of you who don't know that show, it's one of the most charming shows ever written. It, in fact, is the longest-running musical in the world. It was open for 55 years in New York City. I was only in the show about 2 years out of the 55, but it's a charming, charming show, and there's a song you all know from the show. It's called Try to Remember the Kind of September When Life Was Slow and oh so mellow. That sound familiar? I was having a wisdom tooth extracted one time when that song came on. Music. Try to remember it right now? Really? I had a lovely time. As Chris mentioned, I got to do that show, 800 performances, which is a frickin' lot of shows. All the glamour of show business fades on that 8th show of the week, which is a Sunday night, when you've already done 3 on the weekend, and now you've got 1 more on Sunday night, and your voice is shot, and your energy is shot, and it's not glamorous at all, and you got to still do it. But it was a wonderful, wonderful career, and yet, little by little, I found that what had kind of inspired me a lot in my teenage years, which was exploring spiritual ideas and exploring nonviolence and peace and all these things, was getting stronger and stronger for me. And I thought, why am I on stage? I don't feel like I'm making an impact that's going to last as long as if I was doing something maybe with more meaning or more depth. And having said that, this is a show that is so memorable in the lives of many people that 50 years after they saw it, they said, you were in the Fantastics? Oh my God, which part were you? And well, I wasn't the girl. So it was a very rich and lovely time, but after a while, as I say, I started to realize that my soul, my heart was yearning for more. I was wanting to learn life at a whole nother level. I was 23 and decided to make the move to California, which is what you did when you had that urge in those days, right? Go to California. Everybody's into that kind of stuff out there. And I stayed a long time. And I want to bring you up to date, and I'll skip a lot of the story. There's one chunk of the story I'll share more a little bit later, but over the last 40 plus years now, it's been an incredibly rewarding and incredibly challenging journey, both to learn how to kind of follow my heart in the midst of a highly stressful life called being alive in the year 2022, or the year 2010, or the year 2001, or whatever year it was. So the backstory for me is that the issue of stress has been around me and with me, like it is for all of us, but I have been in positions where I was able to study it and learn how to create tools and technologies based on science that could make a difference day by day in people's lives. And that gave me tremendous inspiration that, wow, I'm doing something that can change somebody's life quickly if they practice. And so I've had the privilege of teaching this on 4 continents, tens of thousands of people. And it's been quite a journey and quite a joy. So that's a little bit of my backstory and why I'm here. Gary Gilman and I met at a festival in a conference in Cabo San Lucas in February, which was the first time I'd left the country since COVID, and the first live event I think I'd even attended as well. And so our connection, and he was very aware of HeartMath, led to my invitation to come here. So thank you, Gary. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Rebecca. And the board members that I've already met, Lori and Ron and Rob and others. So HeartMath is this very interesting process that I want to kind of talk to you a little bit about tonight, because even though none of you are directly connected to stress, at least you have family members that are. Winky, winky. So, and by the way, many of the photos in this presentation I took with my iPhone. So I was living on the Hudson River at the beginning of COVID. That was the view out of my living room window one morning over Upper Manhattan. It didn't have the screen. That's because there's some words that are going to come up on the screen. But I'm a great lover of sunsets, sunrises, water, clouds, anything natural. I've been taking pictures already around this venue because it's so gorgeous. So I kind of fall to my knees often in the presence of beautiful nature. So what HeartMath is, and I think what's hopefully going to be relevant to all of you tonight, is a 30-year-old system now. It's been around for actually since 1991. That's based on science. And I think that's the key aspect of what makes it powerful, is that HeartMath has spent 30 years now researching the mechanisms of why smart people do stupid things. Why chronic stress can lead to all kinds of mental, emotional, physical issues, which we already know, right? But it gave the science to it. So I've been stopped on the street in Cape Town, South Africa, in London, by people who found out I was one of the creators of HeartMath. Who said, "You were one of the creators of HeartMath? Oh my God, thank you so much. You guys were pioneers in researching things that were considered woo-woo or alternative. Now there's mainstream science to back up a lot of what we kind of intuitively have felt." That's part of what I'm going to share with you tonight. So that research that's been going on now for over 30 years has looked into all kinds of things, from something I'll teach you a little bit about tonight called heart rate variability. Sounds technical, it's kind of cool. How connected the heart is to our brain function. Anybody ever noticed when your heart is racing, you're not particularly intelligent? IQ seems to drop 20, 30, 40 points when the heart's racing, meaning because you're angry, you're frustrated, you're panicked. Intelligence doesn't seem to be there as sharp, right? We see that. Well, there's science behind why that happens. So we have been looking into all that since the early 90s. But even more important than the research was to create techniques that tonight, if anything was said by anybody that caused you to feel stress, there'd be a technique for what do you do? Because one of the things we realized was that most of the approaches to stress up until we had started were sort of after the fact things. Go to a spa, take a walk in the woods. Well, when you're in the meeting with your boss, can we just take a walk in the woods right now? How about let's go do the couples massage thing. I know you're my boss, it'd be maybe a little inappropriate, but like none of those are practical strategies, right? So we said it's got to be practical. It's got to be things that can be used in the moment stress is happening, or when you are about to go into that meeting, which every week when you do that meeting, it drives you crazy because that thing happens every time. And so you're already experiencing stress and the meeting hasn't even started. Who can relate to ever having had that happen? Thank you, you honest people that raise your hands. So practical techniques to use in the moment, not just later when you have time, or when you have 20 minutes to be in a darkened room, not necessarily practical. And lastly, HeartMath came up with a series of pretty cool technologies that allow us to kind of get a window into what's actually happening in our heart and retrain it. And I'll explain why that's relevant as we go. So, and Stanford, that was mentioned, Chris mentioned it in the bio. I've been teaching HeartMath programs and now creativity programs for 25 years at Stanford, and it's been fun to have an audience like that. You know, from the business school to the School of Medicine to the last 15 years, it's been the employee wellness program. And highly intelligent people, as you can imagine, to work at Stanford, in any part of Stanford, you know, they're checking to make sure you're sharp. And it's been fun to have that as a place to kind of try out a lot of the ideas. Chris referred to this concept, of the title, Pull the Plug on Stress. So in 2002, I was approached by the Harvard Business Review to write an article about what HeartMath was doing with executives around executive health and performance. How many of you are recovering executives, still executives, know any executives? That should be most of you. So that article came out in July of 2003, and I wrote a book around that same time. That book was about 250 pages, way easier to write than the 7-page article for Harvard Business Review. The redraft, that took longer, the 7-page article, than to write a 250-page book. But it came out, and it was very popular, and they approached us in 2015 saying they were doing a special issue on some of the best articles throughout the history of HBR, and they wanted to feature our article as one of those. So I had the tremendous honor of having the same article published twice in the Harvard Business Review, and that's the topic of tonight. Those of you who would like to get that article, because it's still available, I can send it to you. I've got my email address on the last slide. I'm happy to share it with anybody who would like to read it. These are two of the graphics that I love from the article. The first one, an executive, clearly, blowing his top, you know, just losing it completely. The second one, everything's cool, everything's chill. And in the article there, we talk a lot about an actual case study with a very senior executive in the UK of an oil company that we'd worked with, and how he was able to improve his health, his relationships, and his performance in the work through learning some tools of how to manage one's own reactions to stress. Because a lot of what tonight is about is how do we manage our reactions to stress, especially those things that are coming that we know could be stressful. So kind of the philosophy of HeartMath has been, and I'm talking about this in a context that I was one of the original creators of it, part of the leadership team from day one. For 11 years, I was CEO until 2011, and I stepped down as CEO for reasons I'll share later. And but I'm still actively helping evangelize about it because I've seen it so helpful to so many people in my life, let alone myself. And so I'm sharing this not because I work for the company anymore. I haven't actually worked for the company in about 6 or 7 years. But I still believe in it so much. It still is a part of my life, and I want to share it with those that are interested. So part of the whole view that we had at HeartMath was that everybody, I don't care who you are, what station in life you are, what gender you are, what generation you are, everybody needs tools to deal with the tremendous amount of uncertainty. I mean, if there's anything characterizing the last 3 years, it's unbelievable levels of uncertainty. If people ask me my 5-year plan, and I'll say, you're joking, right? You really think I have a 5-year plan that would be meaningful? I'm trying to get to, what time is it now? 6:15. I'm trying to make it to 7 comfortably. Actually, I need to get to 7:10, then we can do questions. That's my immediate goal. We'll see how we do to 7:30, and then maybe to 8, and see how. So I think that's one of the challenges these days is the level of uncertainty is driving a lot of us crazy. There's so few things that we can seemingly count on in the same way. So how do we react to such uncertainty? We get stressed. We get anxious. We get worried. Fear comes up because we can't control the things we used to be able to control. It's not easy. A central part of our view and kind of what we were even founded for back in 1991 was this idea that the heart is central to how we are as human beings. And part of what we figured out was that for millennia, the heart was revered by every major culture and minor cultures, let alone every major religion of the world. The heart was revered as a source of courage, intuition, hope, compassion, care. That's what the Bible's talking about. That's what the Quran is talking about. That's what the Torah is talking about. That's every major religion has revered the heart. And then science came along about 150 years ago and said, actually, the heart is just a fantastical machine. It was the Descartes and the Cartesian idea that things were mechanical and the heart was a fantastic machine. And there's some truth in that. But they were missing the fact that there are all these other dimensions of the heart which are connected to whether we're happy or not. How many of you at some point in your life told your kid, go back out on stage and just sing from your heart? When you have to do that speech, speak from your heart. Or get back out there in the field and just play with your heart, son. You can do that. How many of us have said things like that? Did somebody teach us to do that? We heard that, but it made sense to us, right? When you do something with your heart, it seems to work better. It's like all of you is in it. And so we came along and said, yes, that's true, but science is screwing with us. Because science is saying, no, it's just a pump. And the brain's everything. And we're saying, no, not sure that's really true. And then over the last 30 years, there's all kinds of evidence have come up that the heart is actually an intelligent system, has neurons, can process information in ways we never dreamed could happen, and it happens. The heart and brain are actually talking to each other 24/7 as long as we're alive. And in fact, in the fetus, the first sign of life, how they know there's a fetus, is the heartbeat. And there's no brain yet. And there's no organs yet, except the heart with a beat. And that's how we know there's life. And the final sign that truly there's no life anymore, when the heart cannot be resuscitated. So the heart's the beginning and the end. So we said, more to the heart than it just being a fantastical pump. Yes, it is that. And it's amazing what it does. So I'll get into a little bit of that tonight. And I've kind of alluded to this third point about this idea that when the heart and brain could be working together, I already alluded to this. When your heart's racing, tend to act stupid. When you're feeling happy, when somebody's given you a compliment, think about the last time somebody genuinely thanked you for something. Didn't your mind also seem clearer? Like everything seems brighter? Well, there's science for why that is. And yes, that's true. Positive emotions that we often feel here translate as improvements in cognitive function. So the brain does have more clarity thanks to positive emotions. So there is an actual connection that is now measurable, verifiable, and all that kind of stuff. And tonight, we're not going to go into that much depth on it, but kind of whet your appetite. If you want some more, that's what tomorrow is about. Right as we were launching HeartMath, the World Health Organization came out with this pretty dramatic statement that stress had become a global epidemic. It's kind of quaint to hear that now in the view of the latest one, but already before any internet even existed except for government and military, before anybody had a cell phone, before there was anything like the World Wide Web, before there was anything like AI, any of that stuff, there were already warning signs and warning alarms being rung saying it's already a global epidemic. There's already levels of discontent and mental health issues 32 years ago. Already we were aware of it. So that's kind of why HeartMath started, was there's already a problem, and we were anticipating it would invariably get worse because some of the issues that were already rough then were because systems were out of balance and were going to be more challenging. So here's here's a fun one. So think of the last time you got an email or a text or an alert, and as soon as you saw the name of the person, you felt a stress reaction. Who's got who can relate to that? You didn't have to open the email yet. That moment of feeling, ugh, him. I know what this is going to be. You don't have to open it because you already are stressing out about it. That reaction, a study came out in 1992, causes a cascade of 1,400 biochemical changes in your body. That momentary reaction. Even if you open up the email and it's a joke, not something bad from the guy who always sends you bad messages, even if it's a happy thing, you've already started a cascade inside your body based on this reaction that you've had. 1,400. You see, adrenaline's the famous one. Cortisol is the other famous one, the stress hormone. 198 cousins also being born because in that moment we're feeling that's a threat. That person is a threat to me. That message is a threat to me. So our body is gearing up to fight. So those 1,400 biochemicals you need, if right now some wild animal jumps me on the stage, I need to gear up and not be thinking smart, just be thinking survival, right? So that's a survival reaction that we need, except that we're reacting to the name in our email inbox. That's hardly life-threatening. And so what happens is we go through enough of that in the last 3 years, it's like every other moment, there seems to be another stressful thing. So we build the neural circuitry, the circuitry in our brain and body that kind of reinforces stay on alert. You never know when's the other shoe going to drop, right? Does this make sense? 1,400 biochemical changes. Some of those biochemicals have half-lives of 6 to 8 hours. So it means 6 hours later, half the adrenaline is still circulating around your blood, and there's no actual threat, ever. And yet your body has reacted, and there are consequences to your health of those reactions, which I'll go into as we go. So what happens is whenever you have one of those, and especially when they keep happening, more and more stressful things happen. Anybody feeling stressed out right now that I'm even talking about all this? It's okay if you are. I wouldn't be surprised if you are. I'm bringing up the topic of stress, and it's easy to, I was hoping to have something relaxing tonight. It will be very soon. But what happens when we're in this mode is that we get on nervous system overload. So if you've ever had, some of you are probably retired now and you're not in active jobs, but you still have things on your mind. If you've ever had that experience of being dead tired from a day, but you can't fall asleep. But it's not because you're not tired. It's because this won't shut off. And usually this is some emotional reaction that you had during the day, some annoyance, some frustration, and that won't turn off. And that's why you stay awake. Or you can fall asleep because you're tired, but then you wake up at 2 a.m. because that thing, it's wakened you. And so that's biological, that's physiological, and we can change it. That's the hope in all of this, is that first the bad news, it's worse than we think. The good news is it's far more controllable than we imagine, far more controllable. I'll give you some very hopeful data later. So you get the picture of what these depleting emotions can do to us. The good news is we don't always have stressful reactions. So if at any point tonight you've laughed, thought, oh, that was a fun thought, that was a fun thing he just said, or, oh, that was cute, or that was nice when he sang the little part of that song, all those moments when you felt something positive, your biochemistry was always also changing. If your mood had changed, that was biochemistry also changing in your body. Another set of 1,400 biochemicals, roughly, were being produced in your body. So you felt nice. And so the message here is we're in control of this complex biochemical factory, and we never knew we were standing there at the control of the whole thing. We're hitting warning, warning all day long, and the 1,400 bad boys are getting created, and there's no real threat in most cases. When if we were to step outside and breathe gratitude for you live in Vail. Come on. I'm not saying there's no stress. I'm not saying you shouldn't ever feel anything but the glory, the majesty of nature. But come on, you live in a place that it can't be that hard to feel some gratitude when you need it, right? And so just that act of stepping outside and, wow, I get to live here. I get to be here for these 3 days. A new set of biochemistry is being circulated through our bodies when we ever feel gratitude or compassion or peacefulness. And that's powerful to realize that you're doing that just by changing your state. And then recent research has come up with this idea. Those of you who know the term epigenetics, which basically an author named Dr. Bruce Lipton has popularized this concept. The view used to be for decades that our genes determine everything. So the genes we're born with determine hair color, eye color, risk of breast cancer, risk of prostate cancer, risk of all kinds of things. And we're kind of a victim of our genes, and you're born with a set, and good luck to you. Make the best of your genes. Well, come to find out, that's not really how it works. We're born with a whole ton of genes, but they don't all turn on. We could have the gene for a certain disease, Alzheimer's, whatever, but it may never turn on. If we've led a balanced enough life without chronic stress, without debilitating stress, certain genes may never turn on. And what was discovered in research around practices like HeartMath and mind-body attempts to just feel grateful for things in our life, things like that change our biochemistry so much that they discovered that doing practices to bring balance to our emotions, to our mind, etc., 595 genes, and it's probably even more than that, but when the study was done about 10 years ago, 595 they could identify, all upregulate. Upregulating means there's certain genes in our system that will help encourage our longevity. They don't necessarily turn on unless we help them turn on. There are other genes in our body that we don't want to turn on because we have a family history of a certain disease. Oftentimes people get a bad disease right after a major stress. Sometimes that's because that gene that they already had turned on, and now that disease could happen. The gene doesn't have to turn on. So come to find out, when we do things to bring in more happiness, more joy, more gratitude to our lives, 595 genes are doing what they're designed to do to help you thrive and to live healthfully. So the ones you don't want turning on, don't. That's what upregulate means for them. The ones you do want to turn on that protect your health and longevity, they turn on, and that's what you want. Does this make, so it's all guided by our moods, our changing attitudes, which is hard these days. Hard to stay positive, right? Tonight, it's different. So I'm going to teach you a technique, and this is a super simple one, and we were not very creative in our early days, so the first technique we named was called neutral. That was like the most boring possible term for a technique. Neutral? Like that's the best you could do? But I actually like it, because the idea of neutral is that throughout our day, throughout a week, a year, we hear many bits of information through the news, through family. We hear stuff. And a lot of times it's incomplete information, right? We're hearing a snippet, and we're not hearing an entire story, and yet we're having a reaction already to what we think is what's being said. So if you think about how many times that may happen, where you react to something before you have a whole story, that could be hundreds of times in a year. What if you could just say, I'm staying neutral right now. I'm not going to let myself go that way or this way. I'm just going to stay neutral. We don't know the whole story. Just stay neutral. And that is as simple as, what am I going to wear? Like what am I going to wear tonight? Stay neutral. It doesn't have to be an emotional reaction. Just stay neutral. So neutral is, the concept of it is kind of a building block to enable us to have a point of peace, a point of balance, instead of what happens for so many of us these days, with so many stresses constantly being reminded of, is that we're in this kind of hyper-reactive stage, not realizing it. And so we over-dramatize this and over-dramatize that, and it's a lot of reaction that tends to go on, even silently, even behind the veil of we seem to be a happy person. So I want to just share this neutral idea with you, because I found it extremely helpful. If you're nervous about a meeting you're going to have, if you're nervous about going to the doctor to have that checkup that you've put off a little too long, or you're waiting to go to the doctor to get the results, all these are times when neutral is a really smart place to try to be. Does this make sense? As a foundation, there's a lot more to HeartMath than neutral. But what we started to realize from our research was that it's so easy for us to have all these little reactions, partly because there's so many interruptions. And these days with Apple Watches and Fitbits and all the information coming in, you could react to this and react to that. And then, oh my God, check your phone. Oh my God, all the alerts. Flood alert. I saw on my weather app, flood alert for Vail tonight. And Rob told me, oh, that's like every day of the year they give you that warning here. It's like I calmed down. I'm on the second floor at the Antlers. I didn't think that there was any danger of where I was staying. But my point is, all these things that can come to us, right? It's humorous, isn't it, to think about flood alert in Vail. Really? Flood alert? I'm not seeing any rain at all, frankly, but I had that moment of like, flood alert? Be careful. That was you. That was watching it. Marvel Comics. So neutral is this idea of it's basically a breathing technique. And so neutral is like becoming the country of Switzerland. In other words, saying, I'm not taking a position on this topic yet. I'm going to stay neutral and not age my system in the process, because what was that number? How many biochemical changes when you have a stress reaction? Who remembers that number? 1,400? So being neutral saves the 1,400 from being born. and having a rocking time in you needlessly. Does it make sense? So let me teach you. So what we're going to do is I invite you to close your eyes. If you're not comfortable closing your eyes, if you never close your eyes, try it. If you're really resistant to the eye closing thing, you can leave them open. But I encourage you to close it just because I'm in charge. And I am telling you to do this. And you get to experience the reaction you have to me saying that. Okay. So I invite you, actually now, if your eyes are closed or not, to focus your attention in the area around your heart, the center of your chest. You're not trying to feel the heart beating or anything as dramatic as that, just focusing your attention there. I could have said focus on your toe or focus on your knee, and you'd be able to do that. You could focus on your toe, you could focus on your knee. But for this exercise, you're going to focus in the area of your heart. And now imagine you can breathe in and out through your heart in a slow rhythm. So imagine you're drawing the air in like a column of air into your heart. Breathe in. And as you exhale, allow the air to pass out through your heart. And breathe in again through your heart. And breathe out through the heart. And breathe in through the heart. And breathe out through the heart. And now all you daring people, open your eyes and keep doing this. Open your eyes and just listen to me. Look wherever you want to look. Keep breathing in the same manner. You're breathing in slowly. Not uncomfortably slow. You're not like going. Not weird breathing, just normal breathing, but a little longer, a little slower than normal. Keep doing it as I'm talking. This one little technique, as innocuous and boring a name as it has, is remarkably powerful in balancing out that biochemical seesaw that we're on, either producing too many of the bad boys because we're reacting to something, or we're rarely producing too much of the good guys, not too many people walking around in that state, unfortunately. So I encourage you, as we keep going from time to time, and I'll remind you, to just do that. So, and part of why I'm asking you to do this is HeartMath's emphasis was always creating tools that are practical in the moment. If you were driving, you could do this. If you were in a meeting, you could do this. You're breathing anyway. Your eyes are open anyway. All I'm doing now is suggesting you do it in a certain way, which helps to balance your nervous system, balance that biochemistry, and we got all the science to prove what I'm saying actually is true. And so you've got this simple process that no matter where you are, you could be in the shower and say, I'm nervous about that thing I got to do at 10 o'clock. Breathe right now. Just breathe. Balance your system. Balance your nervous system. You got a tool already built in. So we're done. You're finished. You got your money's worth. So that's neutral. And I'll encourage you to come back to it. And it's just two very simple steps. Step one is focus around the heart. And again, don't focus on the organ like you're trying to visualize it pumping, anything weird like that. It's just this area. When my daughter was born almost 36 years ago, and the vast array of emotions I was experiencing, a lot of them were right in here. It was my heart that was feeling like, oh my God, I am holding my daughter. This is crazy. My heart was feeling that. Anybody can relate to that? So the practice of just bringing the attention there and then breathing in a gentle way, not something forced, not something weird, just about 5 seconds in, about 5 seconds out is the optimal rate. That's neutral. I use it as a management tool all the time. We'd be in a management meeting and somebody would come in with some news that was, you potentially could fall off the stage, that kind of news. And I would say, you know what? Let's stay neutral. We don't have the full story yet. And some people say, I want to not be neutral right now. I'm saying, okay, go for it. You see how that works out for you. You're going to probably make some bad decisions because you're acting too quick and we don't know enough yet. So neutral's got a super practical aspect to it. Those moments when you find yourself being anxious, worrying, and the worry is not going to help the situation, and that projecting into the future is not going to make a difference. Try to find that place that I just described. Okay, now this is some of the cool stuff, and I'm looking at the time. I probably should speed up and have less stories and less laughter. No, I won't stop the laughter. So a little bit about this heart-brain connection. I just love that graphic, number one. It's pretty dramatic, isn't it? So I alluded to this earlier, that in the early 90s, it was discovered that the heart has a complex nervous system. The heart has its own nervous system with about 40,000 little, what are called sensory neurites, like little brain cells, but they're in the heart. And they process information. And it's such a complex structure, it's actually considered a little brain. And there's a branch of cardiology now known as neurocardiology to study the nervous system that exists in every human heart. So part of what we sense in the heart is it's not just a pump. There's this nervous system that is processing information that comes in to the body from all kinds of sources. It turns out that while we have been taught, mostly in the last 30, 40 years, that the brain is the master computer and everything else is sort of dumb in response to the commands of the brain, basically, I'm oversimplifying. Turns out there is constant communication back and forth between the heart and the brain. The heart is sending massive amounts of information north to the brain. The heart is processing information through its function as the circulatory system. The heart also can sense information from outside the body. It's highly, highly sensitive. The heart produces an electrical signal. When you hear the ka-bump, ka-bump of the heart, that's a rhythm, but it's also an electrical signal. That signal is 60 times stronger than what the brain produces. 60 times stronger in the heart than the brain. The heart's the biggest magnetic part of our system by far, hundreds of times more powerful. So there's an interesting kind of, why would the heart be so powerful? Because there's more to it than just being a fantastical pump. So it turns out when you can do things to affect the rhythm of your heart, which you learn through HeartMath, and you'll learn some more tonight. Right now, if we had you hooked up to a ECG machine, probably nearly all of you would have seen the pattern of your heart slowing down and becoming more smooth just by doing that steady breathing through your heart. The pattern and the rate of your heart would have changed just in that minute or two that you were doing that. And by the way, feel free to keep doing it right now. Just breathe in that steady rhythm. There's no downside to doing it. You're not going to get so distracted by your breathing that you'll stop listening. Don't worry, that's not going to happen. So there's no downside to doing this, and there's a ton of upside. So all these cool ways in which the heart affects the brain. And I'm going to kind of go through this part quick because it gets a little sciencey, and those that want more, I'm going to go into more depth on this tomorrow. But the heart's at the center of this autonomic nervous system, and one simple way to look at it is that the heart is receiving signals that cause it either to speed up if we think there's a threat, or causes the heart to slow down when we know we've got to spend some time and relax right now, we need to recover right now. So back when we were tribal, there was this need to fight, to kill the mastodon, because that was food and shelter and clothing for the winter. So the tremendous energy to fight and fight and fight and fight. Cortisol, 1,400 biochemicals, fight, fight, fight. And then hopefully you won and you brought it back to the tribe, and celebration. So from fight to celebration, that's how our system is designed. We have to fight, we have to meet deadlines, we have to save our kids, protect our kids, but we also have to do a lot more of the downtime of it's time to recover now. It's time to rest more now than we think we need to. Who's noticed that? I need to rest more than I think. So I had COVID 8 months ago, and fully vaxxed, fully boosted, pretty strong immune system in general, got COVID. It hit hard, and on the second morning, I thought, I am not resting enough. I am not fully relaxed in my body. Granted, there was a virus, and I had a strong high fever, but I still said, I can do more. And I took myself into a meditation similar to what I'm going to do with you guys shortly, and got into a very deep, relaxed state and fell asleep for another couple hours. I'd waked up early in my normal waking time and thinking, are you seriously thinking of getting up at 6:30? You have full-on COVID right now. Stay asleep, but really rest now, really go into rest. I woke up 2.5 hours later in a deep state of peace, and I could feel that I was over the worst of it, like something profound had shifted in my system where the healing nature of our bodies was now allowed to do its job because I wasn't fighting it, which is what happens when we're ill, right? There's a fight going on because of whatever the illness may be. So my learning from that was I have to rest more than I think I need to. I'm in the middle right now of moving. When I get back, I'll be moving shortly. I'm in a very interesting career shifts going on, coming out here in the middle of a week. A lot of shifts going on right now. I keep telling myself, rest more than you think you should. You've proven you can be a soldier. You've done that for decades. Now, prove you can be a soldier of rest. Because we all need more rest, because we've all been through more than we realize. All of us have. And if you feel like you had it a little easier than some other families, you're still in a community that suffered. You're still in family members that have suffered. We're all feeling it from each other, no matter whether it may have been a little easier for our family. I had no deaths in my immediate family. I'm extremely grateful for that. Also, I hadn't seen my daughter in 3 years until last month, because she's immunocompromised and she couldn't see anybody. Being away from my only daughter for 3 years was really hard. Thank God we spent some great time together. Anyhow, I won't go into the depth on this, but where we're headed with this is that the heart is this, the more we can kind of be grateful we have this miraculous heart that science is learning more and more about, that we already intuitively know life gets better when our heart's in it. You know, how many times do you leave a job because your heart's not in it anymore? Or leave a relationship, or leave a community. Like, I just don't feel like, just not feeling it anymore. My heart's feeling something else. So all of that, there's a make sense to that. It's not just, sweet little philosophy. So I wasn't going to go into the hormonal thing so much now, although the heart is also a hormonal gland. Those of you who've heard of the hormone called oxytocin, which is thought of as a love hormone, or especially maternal love, produced in the heart. How many of you knew the heart was also a hormonal gland? So the heart's producing electrical signal, magnetic signal. It's sending 4 times more information north to the brain than the other way around. It's producing this, a lot's going on in the heart. The brain's still, seriously incredible. But all we're saying is joint venture time. They got to be working together. Your head and your heart have to be working together, right? So one little fun anecdote or story, in addition to the fact that that's one of the cutest little pictures I've ever seen, is that positive emotions, counterintuitively, have a positive impact on brain function. Positive emotions have a positive impact on cognitive function. Counterintuitive, isn't it? You would think, you have to do cognitive things to have a cognitive effect. Turns out positive emotions, so things like happiness, compassion, joy, change the biochemistry. So our body's not working so hard, so the brain's not aging as much. So study after study done over several decades have shown that people who are more on the positive side emotionally, more optimistic, more joyful, more grateful. Ron and I were talking about how important playfulness is, especially as we age. And he's a young man at heart. And it turns out there's all kinds of evidence saying, indeed, one of the secrets to longevity is being able to be more playful, have a childlike spirit of not taking things so seriously and so heavily at times. So it turns out longevity, you have a better chance at longevity if you're more positive. Cognitive flexibility, decision-making, memory, clinical problem-solving, job performance, and creativity, innovative problem-solving. So those times you walk outside and you realize, I need to just stand outside for 5 minutes. You have just benefited your brain in really significant ways. It didn't just feel good to be out there. Yes, it did, but your brain just said, thank you. I've been working hard all day. Thank you for giving me a break. That was a strange voice, wasn't it? Okay, so I'm going to touch on this a little briefly, and heart rate variability is this idea that our heart is constantly changing speed. How many of you already knew that? The HeartMath people already know that. It's always changing speed. Asleep, running, meditating, sleeping, anything, it's always changing speed. Why would it always change speed? Well, you never know what your body has to do the next moment. What if I got you all blissed out and we're all at 60 beats a minute or 40 beats a minute, and we were there for a couple hours, and then we smell smoke in the building. Anybody smell? I'm smelling smoke. We'd have to suddenly get in gear and change gears. Well, the design of the human system is that our heart is always changing speed, because you never know what you're going to need to be next. You don't know. You may need to be the voice of the energy of calm in a dangerous situation, EMTs. They've got to be able to not be operating like that in order to deal with the tragedy that's in front of them, right? EMTs have to be the calm in the storm. So we're talking about having the control over our systems enough that we're the ones calling the shots. So heart rate variability is simply a way of kind of tracking this. So the fundamental principle is that our heart's always changing speed. Most people didn't know that, but that's the way it works. And this is now looking at, say, 16, 17 heartbeats. And the blue dots represent the actual speed of each heartbeat. So you see it at first. It doesn't light up on the screen. So the first blue dot's around 72, then the next one's around 75, next one's 82, 90. You see it's a series of heartbeats getting faster, right? And then a series of heartbeats, the blue dot's getting slower, and then a series of heartbeats getting faster. So that's a heart rhythm. Heart rate speeds up. So when you do that 5 seconds in, well, let's do it again while we think about it. Right now, focus on your heart. Breathe in for about 5 seconds. And now just breathe out for about 5 seconds. If you keep doing that, and we had you measured, hooked up to a machine, your heart rhythm would look like the top graph. As you breathe in, it's speeding up and speeding in and speeding up. As you breathe out, it's slowing down and slowing down and slowing down. When the breathing is all over the place because you're nervous, you're anxious, you're whatever, the pattern is all over the place. Looks like an earthquake, as I'll show you in the next graph. So the rhythm is very important to the health of our heart. And here's where it really becomes, I think, graphic and important as a concept. In the early 90s, we started hooking up a lot of people to ECG machines to measure their heart. Because our theory, it was a theory at the time, now we feel like it's pretty well proven, that our emotional state is directly impacting the patterns of our heart. And since the heart is feeding information to the brain 24/7, our brain is getting the result of our emotions being amplified by the heart, which is why when somebody cuts you off in traffic, you're the one suffering. That panic in the heart, you get stupid. You get really angry with something, you say something you regret. You say something to the person you definitely didn't want to say that to, and now you have to try to live that down for the next 6 months. All of this happens because we allow emotions to get the better of us. Our physiology is also a bit chaotic, and our brain is being compromised, and we know the pathways. So we discovered in our research in the early 90s that whenever you feel any kind of stressful emotion, it's labeled frustration here because that's what was used in this particular study, but it could be anger, worry, depression, anxiety, any of those kind of stress emotions. And by the way, right now as we're talking about that, good time to breathe again, and so you don't get caught into a stress emotion. Any of those stressful emotions produce this chaotic rhythm like you see on the top. Looks kind of like an earthquake, right? So what this means is your heart's kind of, which is how you feel when you're frustrated, right? It's like, life's not the way I want to be. I'm going to tell somebody about it. Well, your heart is paying a price. It's producing this chaotic energy. Since the heart and brain are hardwired, that chaotic rhythm in the heart is sent to the brain. In fact, in the brain, which was first discovered in the late 70s, is called cortical inhibition, meaning 80% of your brain cortex, the cortex, is being inhibited by this chaotic rhythm being sent from your heart, which is why smart people can do stupid things. An emotional reaction is desynchronizing the cortex. Depending on the strength of the emotional reaction, it could be really desynchronized and you really blow it on a decision, or you really say the absolute worst thing that you could have said to your spouse at that moment. I'm sure nobody here has ever done that, but you know people that have done that. So you get the point here? So that little technique, just that one that I taught already, neutral, that's a way of keeping that rhythm of the heart in balance because your breath is directly tied to the rhythm of your heart. So as you breathe in that steady rhythm, you're helping to normalize that pattern. At the same time, you're diffusing that emotion. Because just breathing in a slow way, you start to feel a little more peaceful. Who noticed that already? Just from doing that, I feel a little more peaceful doing that. Imagine if you kept doing it, you'd probably feel even more so. So this particular study was to say, what does the heart look like when we're in these kind of stressful emotions? And that's what it looks like, generally speaking. And then we said, what does it look like when we're in a positive one, like appreciation? And this particular data is one person, same person. The top graph was about 3.5 minutes while they were asked to think about things that frustrated them about their life, their spouse, where they live, their job, their lack of job, whatever it was. And they just tried to kind of experience that while they were being monitored. So the heart rhythm was all over the place because they were frustrated, thinking about all these things. And then we said, switch your gear. Now just focus on the things that you're grateful for, the people that care about you, the plants, your pets, your spouse, your kids, your grandkids, whatever it is, what the things that make your heart sing. Focus on that for the next few minutes. This person, same person who was just doing that to their heart, now they're focusing on all the things they appreciate in their heart, in their life. And look at how it's a perfect sine wave, as it's called. Well, the researchers in the 70s had discovered that rhythm, because it's so healthy for the heart, that's also being transmitted to the brain, just like the chaotic one was. So guess what? The brain's saying, thank you. And so the phenomenon is called cortical facilitation. The cortex, 80% of our brain, can now work easier, which is why stepping outside to feel grateful helps your brain, which is why extending a gesture of kindness to someone helps your physiology, not just the person receiving the gesture of kindness. There's physiology tied to all of these things. They aren't just moods that aren't measurable and scientifically validatable. I think I made up that word. So coherence is when we can be in that state where it's smooth, where the systems in our body are aligned, we're feeling good. Coherence is the term for that. And we now know that if we want to improve our brain function, whether that's because we're aging, and both of my parents my mother was full on Alzheimer's, my father was considered high functioning. He knew I was there as he was passing, but also lost a brother to Alzheimer's. They got 3 in the family. Also lost a brother to Lou Gehrig's disease. So there's some neurological stuff going on in the family, right? So I want to be as conscious of this as I possibly can. And it turns out we've now demonstrated pretty profoundly that the more we can kind of manage our emotions and find more things to be enjoying and being grateful for and praising the good, praising the glory and the beauty around us, that does a tremendous amount to offset all these other things that bring us down and cause us to worry and cause us to be stressed out because we're sensitive people, and who wouldn't be doing all that stuff. When my daughter had to evacuate 2 years ago because the horrendous wildfires in Central California, for a month she was evacuated from her house, a month. That month, 1,000 structures in the town I used to live in were destroyed by this. I mean, you guys got fires out here. That was a scary time. And I had to be, and I know they had to be also, as coherent as they could be during that time of complete uncertainty. They didn't know if their homes were burning down that day or the next day or the next day. They all got through. My family got through. So the point being, the more we can maintain, we're in this together, guys. We're in this together. The more we support each other with compassion, with gratitude, we are helped enormously in measurable ways. So this series of unfortunate health events. So in November of 2009, I was diagnosed with stage 1 bladder cancer. Good news is I'm 12 and a half years cancer-free. No sign of any of it since then. I had to have surgery. I had to have immunotherapy. I started getting staph infections because of the immunotherapy treatments I was getting. The staph spread to my blood. I was now dealing with a second life-threatening condition while the other one was still not out of the woods yet. It was not lost on me that I'd probably gotten the staph infection in the hospital or at the doctor's office. And here I am being treated for a life-threatening condition. I had to wear a PICC line for 6 weeks to drip vancomycin into my blood for 6 hours a day to try to kill the staph that was in my blood as a result of the treatments for the cancer. So I'm 11 and a half years staph infection free, so it's all been good. Meanwhile, arthritic hips from scoliosis that I've had for a long time got worse and worse and worse because of all this other stuff my body was dealing with, and now my hips are screaming, and I'm losing strength in my quad. So walking downstairs, I felt like I was 85 and I was in my mid-50s. And I ended up having double hip replacement right after my mother died. And my marriage was ending. And I was realizing, even though I was CEO of HeartMath and still traveling 100,000 miles a year in those 2 years when I went through everything I just described to you, I still was traveling 100,000 miles a year. I wasn't fanatical, no. I finally realized I can't keep doing this. I have to shift some things. I survived it all, double hip replacement. I don't normally get applause for yoga squat, but thank you for that. I went through some heavy stuff. And what transpired through all of that was a reawakening of the youth side of me, both in terms of kind of embracing. Oh, I forgot, I got some pictures. That's my daughter. That was when I was in for cancer. I was still on my smartphone. I was trying to stay as connected as possible while I'm dealing with a life-threatening condition. And that's me after the first hip replacement. My friends are saying, you look way too healthy. We're not buying you really had a hip replacement. That's the hardware. That's what is in me. I had them both done. So any guys, or women for that matter, that have had it done, that's what it looks like. It's pretty bizarre looking. But thank God I have it, because I can swim, I can dance, I can, good as new, you know. I had to work, by the way, to get there. So all that went on. But what was awakening for me also was, what do I want to be now? I've just gone through a pretty heavy set of experiences. I shortened it 2 minutes to what was 2 years worth, right? You heard a lot of points there. Marriage was ending. Mother passed away after 10 years of Alzheimer's. Double hip replacement, staph infections in my blood. It was MRSA, those of you who are clinical. So that's the worst kind of staph to have, the hardest to treat kind of staph. I thought, why not just go for it? Why not have the, if you're going to have the staph, go ahead and have the MRSA. Just, okay, I've done that, don't have to do that again. At a certain point, I got kind of silly about it, and I thought, I'm going through old age now. This is good. So that later on, I won't have to go through it. I'll just stay young the whole rest of, this is my rationalization. I'm working on it. I'm convinced this is possible. But meanwhile, what awakened in me was, I got to be creative again. And I had this epiphany moment in the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. I was no longer CEO of HeartMath. I was still working in the company, but much more consulting kind of role. I was traveling, seeing my brother in Washington, D.C., and he said, hey, we're going to go to a Christmas Carol sing-along concert at the Kennedy Center. You want to come? And I was like, seriously? I think I've sung enough Christmas carols. And then I said, wait a minute. Dude, you're kind of like having a new life now. Why don't you like go for this? Life-changing experience. No joke. I walked out the theater that night. A voice said to me, your voice needs to be heard again in the world. And I was so humbled and in tears, like, because that night, singing frickin' Christmas carols, it was one magnificent moment after another. And I sat there feeling I'd been in the mountains for 35 years, literally living in the mountains. And I had missed, not Christmas carols so much, but just the magnificence of choirs and orchestra playing these glorious things. And I thought, oh, wow, have I missed this? I had no idea how much I missed this. And the next morning, I reached out to that guy sitting next to me there on the piano, who was my college roommate at the Oberlin Conservatory, who won 7 Emmys as a composer. And he and I started a project called What Makes Your Heart Sing. And it was a keynote performance. We went around to, Kaiser was our main client. We did a lot of events for Kaiser, and we did around the world. And it was using music, using song and story to enliven people, inspire them with why they care about their life and their work in the first place. So that became my joy of, because I felt like I was reborn in this whole process in some ways. That not only did I get my health back, so I didn't think I'd ever dance again, let alone be able to do that easy. Just show you one more time. Maybe one more time. That easy? Never imagined that would happen. So 2018, released an album of original songs. Never imagined I ever would write a song, let alone release an album of songs. That was a wild, like, wow, how did that happen? And little by little, I began to embrace this idea because I had completely surrendered to the idea that you are a creative being and you've been shutting it down. For years now, you shut it down. Nobody forced you to. You just weren't it. You just weren't doing it. And now I was singing, and I was getting paid to sing again. Wow. And now I was dancing, which shocked me. And now I'm hiking, and I'm enjoying physical things that I hadn't been able to enjoy for decades. And I felt this surge of creativity coming through me all the time, like, what more can I do and inspire myself, let alone others? And in 2017, I approached one of these groups at Stanford, and I said, I've been working on this idea of creativity for well-being, and I would love to bring this to Stanford. I said, how soon can you get it done? So 5 years ago, I started teaching this course there. You'll get a very condensed version of it in the afternoon tomorrow if you choose to come. But this whole model that came to me was that all human beings are born with the power to create life, right? We're all born with the power to create life. Whether we do it or not, it's not the point. We have the energy designed into us to create life. It's in our DNA, no denying it. The human race wouldn't still be here if it wasn't the case. My point is that that same energy to create another life is also the energy to create, period. Whether it's to create art, whether it's to create community, whether it's to create a relationship with someone that you don't have as great a relationship with. That urge to create is in us. It's inherent in who we are. A lot of us have had that energy shot down by parents, by siblings, by teachers, by bosses. Stay in your lane. Let the salespeople do that. Keep to the accounting work you're so good at. Who's had those messages in the workplace or in the family, right? So a lot of us never believed we had creative energy. And I don't mean just artistic energy. I'm talking about the ability to say, that's not a problem. We will figure out how to deal with that. That energy that can bounce back. So I've developed this content. I know I'm about to be over time. Yeah, Chris has got the mic. So I'm going to just skip through these last points fairly quickly so we can talk about this idea of creativity being inherent in who we are. Became a model, which is what the Stanford course became, and now I'm teaching it in different places, and I'll do a version of this tomorrow afternoon. And these are the 5 elements that are not result of some exhaustive academic research. It was, what did I do? What did I do in my life to get my creativity back so I feel I'm a more creative person than I've ever been in my entire life? How did I actually do that? Because I didn't follow a step-by-step process, but I intuitively realized I had to pay attention to the whispers in myself that were telling me, you need to be singing, man. You need to dance again. Why are you not doing those things? You know how happy you are when you do those things. How many of you right now are relating to what I'm saying? Whether it's dancing, singing, writing, gardening, biking, things that you once did, you might not think those are creative. Really? Biking on a bike's not creative? You're not creating that experience as you go with how you're perceiving everything you see? You could be riding a bike through paradise and be having one judgmental thought after another because you're not getting along with your spouse. Or you could be creating, my God, I get to live here. Wow. You're creating either way, right? So at a certain point, you realize we are creative beings. We all are. Society makes the mistake of calling the artists the creatives, as though artists have some special gift of creativity. My answer to that was the most valuable people at HeartMath were not the artists, because we didn't really have any. We had some designers. They were the problem solvers. Problem solving is a creative act, right? Relationship building is a creative act. So I'm the Pied Piper of creativity now. And I'm saying we all have so much more than we think. And thank God we do, because in case you hadn't noticed what's going on out there, climate change, the incredible polarization, it's going to take another level of something to get us together. So I'm going to pause there, and because Chris is very eager to have the handheld mic. So why don't I skip to the slide that, should I do this about the classes, or should I do that at the very end, Chris? What? Do it now, okay. So there's not a lot on there, but, oh, well, I got to tell you this story. So about being younger. So I was finding out about some new health technology a year and a half ago. And this guy who was showing me this technology said, hey, you're a HeartMath guy. You're into all this heart rate variability. Let me measure your heart rate variability. And I said, okay, I'll be a guinea pig for the 1,000th time. He measures my heart rate variability. We leave, we go off somewhere else. Come back, and later on he shows me all this data, and then he shows me this graph, which basically said at the time this was taken, I was 67. I'm 69 now. My biological age, according to that test, was 36. And I was like, okay, that's the best news I've had in 10 years. And I said, that's a 31-year gap. That's pretty good. Have you ever had anybody? He said, that's way more than I've ever seen. He said, it must be because of the HeartMath. I said, yeah, it's part of it. But I also got really sick when I was at HeartMath, so I can't give HeartMath all the credit. I believe it's because I've allowed myself to express my creativity. I'm free in a way that I never was before. And so that's part of what the energy tomorrow is going to be like. And I just wanted to share that with you because a cancer survivor who had MRSA, I've gone through salmonella, I've had shingles, I have gout. I've had all these things, some of which were quite serious. And the doctors are saying your biological age is 36, so you're doing something right. So I'm trying to say, even this little thing that I taught you, the neutral, every time you do that, remember, 1,400 biochemicals that if it was a saber-toothed tiger looking at you for lunch, you would need, but it wasn't that, so you don't need those 1,400 bad boys. Be neutral right now. Save that energy. Just that alone would make a whale of a difference. So just briefly about tomorrow. Yeah, so the morning we've got a 2-hour session, up your game. It's going to go into more depth about HeartMath, more tools, more practice. I'm going to lead a meditation and do some other stuff. And then the afternoon is on creativity, so I didn't go into depth on these 5 catalysts, but we're going to get some exercise with that and a meditation, actually move, do some movement. You get to close your eyes so you won't be embarrassed. And I love doing these things, so if you're at all motivated, I think the way we said it, although I'm not sure we need to still do this, was you can come to just the morning or you can come to the whole day. We were saying you couldn't just come to the afternoon. I would almost change that. But anyway, we can keep it the way it was. So you can come to just the morning or you can come for the whole day. And you can register, I don't know, here or online or whatever. So I think that's the last, we can do that at the end. So, Chris, question time.
Great. Thanks, Bruce. Meredith.
For those of us who can't be there tomorrow, can you explain in a technical way what is HeartMath? I understand the premise, but is it just creating a mental state, or is there a technology with it? Is it like biofeedback? Can you please just explain a little bit more so we walk away with a fuller understanding?
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, so HeartMath is a set of techniques. I taught you that one called neutral. There's a bunch more. There is technology that people can access. There's a software version that a lot of health professionals use that's fairly technical. There's an app, that's the cool one, is an app called Inner Balance for any kind of smartphone. It's a sensor that picks up your heartbeat from your ear, feeds it into the app, and the app gives you real-time feedback on whether you're in that chaotic rhythm or as you practice that technique I taught you, you get into a smooth rhythm. So that technology called Inner Balance, Inner, I-N-N-E-R, Balance, is one of the kind of very accessible aspects of HeartMath now. So it's this whole set of techniques. We only had time for one tonight. I'll teach 2 or 3 tomorrow. And then also these various technologies that are all designed as feedback tools. So as you practice a technique, you see the effect in your body through the app. Is that helpful?
So do you see any kind of change in heart rate primarily?
When I didn't get to go into helping you guys understand why the heart's changing, but there's 2 branches of our nervous system, one that speeds up, the other that slows down. When you're operating that whole system in a more balanced way, your heart is benefiting, and you see that improvement in the pattern going, instead of chaotic, it now is going more like a sine wave. So yes, your heart is benefiting. But as I was saying repeatedly, the heart is sending information all over your body all the time. So if you're in a chaotic rhythm, every single cell in your body is getting that chaotic rhythm. And guess what? People near you are getting it too. You remember being around somebody really angry and feeling the, whoa, I want to be in the other room from this guy. Who's had that experience? And the opposite, being around somebody that's genuinely kind and like, oh, it feels good. I want to be kind of closer to this really kind, sweet person. Well, part of what you're sensing is the emanation of their heart, which, by the way, is not defined by the skin. We can measure the rhythmic patterns of the heart several feet away from the human body with equipment that's found in every hospital. So the signal of the heart passes through the skin, which is why certain people, you love being around them because it just feels good. They just, and other people are like, get me anywhere except this person.
There's a lot of talk in medicine now about the gut being the second brain.
Yes.
And the vagus nerve connection to the brain. And I wondered how that fits in with what you're talking about.
Yeah. The question is, there's a lot of talk for now at least 20 years about The gut having a serious nervous system of its own, a brain. 100 million neurons down there. The gut brain, enteric brain is another name for it. And no question, there's a powerful connection between the gut brain and the brain and the head, and they're all connected. HeartMath's focus has been on the heart, hence the name, because of this kind of cultural feeling that we have been dissing the heart for hundreds of years unintentionally, buying into this idea it's just a pump, when in fact our fulfillment comes when our heart's happy. When I got to finally see my daughter again after 3 years of not seeing her, yeah, the hug was fantastic, and the next hug, and the next hug, and the next hug, but it was just, I'm with her again. So to give credence to that is what HeartMath is really about. But it's absolutely true, and the vagus nerve, I use the technology myself right now, specifically designed to help activate and reset the vagus nerve. It's called Sensate. I'm a big fan of Sensate right now. And it's designed to send frequencies in to, the vagus nerve is inherent in the autonomic nervous system. It's getting it'll get too technical for this to answer the question, but it's all connected, and I'm in favor of anything that will help the vagus nerve and the autonomic system. And I just say, from my belief is that make sure the heart's always involved. Because we can be all about the brain and all about the mind and all about the data and forget at the end of the day, I want to be kind. I want to treat people like I want to be treated. And I love the people that are kind. And that matters more than the data to me. So, yes?
I guess for those of us that can't be there tomorrow, besides the neutral and the breathing exercise, what are other techniques, or how can we find out about other techniques to sort of calm yourself down and get out of that frustration mode? And then the other thing is, how do you find your creativity? I know you're probably going to deal with that tomorrow, but if you can't be there, I mean, are there, how do you find that?
Take down my email address, because I'm actually Bruce Cryer at Gmail, hard to remember. I'm teaching a course on creativity, my course on creativity, starting at the end of October, 4 sessions through the university, where I'm now the executive director of this program. And so that's one way. I teach it at Stanford once or twice a year. So if you reach out to me, tell me that you came here, I can give you whatever information you wanted. If the Harvard Business Review article I mentioned earlier, if that's of interest to you, happy to send it to you. It's just a PDF I'll attach to an email. So just feel free to take down that email. The first part of your question, what are the techniques? I'm a serious student of the practice of gratitude. And so the neutral technique that we've been practicing quite a few times now, to that I add gratitude. HeartMath calls that quick coherence. So the idea is you're focusing, you're breathing through the heart to calm the system down and allow those two branches to get working to start working in sync instead of kind of fighting each other. But then by adding gratitude, now you're changing the biochemistry of your system as well. You're adding the positive emotions. So by simply focusing on anything, you can go through a laundry list. You could make a list first, and then when you do the practice, kind of go through. Oh yeah, her, Donna, and Rebecca, and Chris, and Gary, and feel it each time actively. And what I found when I started doing this type of thing quite a few years ago was that there's this multiplier effect. The more you practice appreciation, the more you see things, simple little things like cool shoes, girl in the hat. You start observing things, and so you have more things to appreciate. When this first hit me was, I was commuting every day from a mountain community where I was living in California through basically a redwood forest, and I was in such a stress period. This was in the 80s, before my daughter was born. I was not noticing any of this magnificent beauty I was driving through every day. And then somebody said, appreciation. Whatever you appreciate grows in value. I said, that's profound. Whatever you appreciate grows in value. That's what appreciation means, doesn't it, as an asset. An asset that appreciates is growing in value. That's true for a friendship. When you appreciate the friendship, it grows in value. When you appreciate the love of somebody and you let them know you appreciate it, they love it. You love that feeling. It's growing in value. So appreciation is this like superpower that's hidden in a simple little word of appreciation. But adding that actively, I do that all the time. And then it's the sky's the limit of what you want to be grateful for. I mean, a cloud can do that to me. I'll be looking up the sky, damn, wow. And I'm telling you, my system is so much more sensitive to beauty than it was 15 years ago before I went through all that stuff. I just realized I had a second chance. I was close on a couple things there. It was a rough period, no doubt. Wouldn't wish it on anybody. And I'm so grateful I made it through, and so grateful I get to be here tonight.
Yeah. Yeah, this really has me thinking, okay. Yeah, this really has me thinking. I practice yoga and meditation on a regular basis, and I realize the self-healing qualities of those practices. But I'm thinking with all your research, and you're talking about these chemical releases in the body as a result of where you're putting yourself, what about all the illnesses and things that you've experienced? Do you feel that some of your research and what you've practiced, that's helped you get through this, or it helped your body mend itself? Or even, did you talk to your mother when she was experiencing dementia about some of the research that you've done and maybe how it could reverse some of the impact of dementia or help her with her condition?
I wish that could have happened. We weren't doing the research yet that could have maybe helped her when she was going through it, but thank you for that question. But the first part of your question about illnesses, say that again?
Just the fact that you're talking about chemical releases as a result of breath control and your state of mind, if you can use that for self-healing, or do you think the body is capable of healing itself, say from the gout and these other things that you experience?
Absolutely. Well, that was my COVID story, was that I know that time I took myself into a very deep state of rest, thinking I couldn't do it because my body was going through all the reaction. I know that started the healing process. I kind of skated through COVID. But during my journey of all the steps that I described to you, numerous points, a friend, a family member, a doctor, a nurse would say to me, wow, you're looking so much better than I was expecting. You're doing great. And my response would be, how bad did you think I was going to be looking? Because I just had a hip replaced. I mean, come on now. But I kept hearing this, and I realized I had a lot of resilience. I had been practicing these important things for 20 years. So when I went through all that stuff, I had a reservoir to call upon. So even though it was a really rough couple of years, really rough, I didn't ever hit so far down that it was just like, nowhere to go. I always knew there was some reserve, and I kept getting that response from people like, wow, you look... First time I walked on a new hip in front of my orthopedic guy who'd done it. I'm walking down the end of the hall away from him in these, size 60 paper shorts. Like, that's the best we can do, size paper. Size 60. Walking down to the end of the hall. First time I was kind of walking without any support on this new hip. And I hear the doctor and his physician assistant laughing as I'm walking away. I'm thinking, this is not what you want to hear from your doctor, laughter while I'm trying to walk on my new hip. And I turned around and started walking back to him. I said, everything okay? And he said, we wish all our patients could be as responding so quickly as you are. You're looking amazing. It's only been 2 weeks since whatever it was. So it was yet another moment of, you're doing great. You got something going. Something's rubber inside of you that just bounces back. And I thought, it's all that work that I did to try to come back to normal, come back to neutral. Don't stay messed up in your attitude towards somebody. Don't stay angry. You are paying a price. You are paying a price. As good as it may feel to be angry about that thing, 1,400 bad boys, they don't go away. And then you replay it again and you re-trigger that same 1,400. That's what happens. So neutral, gratitude, appreciation, get out in nature, playfulness. That's what I would have gone into. Tomorrow we will. I'm convinced that having a playful attitude, being spontaneous, letting yourself go a little bit, frees up energy that makes everything else just go easier. It's not a total solution, but it's like...
Let's give Bruce a big round of applause.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate it.